Hey, Luke Abroms, and welcome to the Sick Boot Camp podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure and can't wait to dive into this with you guys.
Yeah, I can't wait to dive into it either. And I think what's really exciting today, quite frankly, is that we have one of our favorite folks on, Ryan Cornea, who is actually the guest co-host. And Ryan was profiled in episode 391 and has actually been a guest co-host with me on at least one occasion, maybe even two occasions prior to today. But this is a special podcast for one important reason, that is that one of the challenges that we have in the Lyme disease community is that in most cases, our diagnosis comes in the supermarket rather than in a doctor's office. And I think there are a lot of different reasons why we are more likely to be diagnosed when interacting with somebody either in the community, in
Mhm.
person, or in the community on social media or somewhere else. And what's interesting, I think, about this podcast and what's exciting about this podcast is, but for you, Luke, Ryan probably would not have been diagnosed, or certainly would not have been diagnosed when he was diagnosed. So I think that's an exciting, preview to this conversation. And I thank you, Ryan, not only for agreeing to co-host with me again, but I also want to thank you for bringing Luke onto this podcast. And I'm going to let you move forward with introducing Luke to the folks and helping folks to learn about Luke's really powerful journey.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Rich, for the warm welcome and introduction. Luke and I have an interesting story of how we were introduced to each other, and this is actually the first time we've actually had a video slash audio uh, call communication back and forth with each other. Prior to that, it was just through messaging on Facebook, and I after our last episodes that we recorded. I was thinking of like coming back full circle and thinking about all the things that got me to where I'm at. And I'm like, well, geez, there's a guy who has an incredible story as well that I don't know how much longer I would have gone not knowing what I had happening with me with Lyme disease if it wasn't for this gentleman here that was a big advocate and pushed me to dig deeper. And so I wanted to pass it and pay it forward and allow Luke to share his story. And because it's just crazy how things work, and I believe in synchronicity and serendipity, and I just think that there must be a reason that this all happened. And so, Luke, thanks for coming on and doing this for us.
Ryan, it's great to see you. Thank you for having me and bringing me on this journey. Uh, you know, Talking about this has been a passion of mine, and now I get to help spread this word as you did, and you facilitated this, and so I can't thank you anymore. So like I said, and like you touched on, I think this, we started talking and, around 2019, 2020.
Well,
It was
before you
pretty,
get too into it, Luke,
yeah,
I know there's a
go
lot you
ahead.
want to say. So, but let's go back and give a little
Sure.
context to where you live,
Sure.
where you're from. Tell us your life before Lyme disease, your profession, your career, all that stuff. Like a little bit about you. Help the listeners understand your background and get to know you a little bit more personally.
Awesome. Yeah. So I was born in a town, Florence, Alabama. It's in the northwest corner of the state of Alabama. I had a pretty, normal childhood. I was a two-sport athlete in high school, all the way up to pretty much college. Um, I'm avid. I guess you would call it a hobby addict. There's nothing that I probably don't do. I'm always that guy you can call if you want to go play paintball. I have a paintball gun. If you want to go mountain biking, I have a mountain bike. If you want to play golf, I got golf clubs. So I consider myself that guy. There's not one really thing that I just dedicate all my time to. I'm a hobby addict, so um, that's just kind of who I am, and the essence of who I am. My ethos is just I'm down to do whatever. And I moved to Birmingham in around 2016, which is in the central part of Alabama. It's the biggest city of Alabama. Um, my journey from there, I got a bachelor's degree at University of North Alabama, which is also in Florence. And I I got a degree in business management, and I've never once worked in my degree field. I've always kind of been drawn to like the construction, engineering part of things. That's always piqued my interest. I'm not an office person, so every job I've had since college has been very physically active and physically demanding. So basically, that's how I got to where I am today, with the fire service. Been doing that for like 5 years here in Birmingham, Alabama. What kind of motivated me towards that is September 11th, just like pretty much, you know, everybody in this era of firefighting, um, kind of motivated me when I was, you know, 2001. I believe I was like in eighth grade, and I saw those firefighters coming out, you know, and running through that tunnel. I don't know if it was the Lincoln Tunnel. I'm not really sure. New York, and they were not, you know, they weren't even on duty. You know, they would go by their fire station, grab their turnout gear, and run. And ever since then, I was just like, man, you know, that was always kind of my thing. You know, I was like, I couldn't really find like a job that I wanted to do. I always kind of would try something for a couple years, then move on to something else. You know, and I think that's part of like who I am. Like, you know, how my hobbies always change. It drives my wife crazy, because
Same with mine.
at one moment I'm buying all this expensive fishing gear, and then I'm fishing, and then I don't touch it for a few years, and I pick it back up again. And so it is what it is. So, um, but yeah, I mean, that's pretty much in essence who I am and where I'm at now.
So when we first started talking, it was about that 5 years ago when you were, I believe, training or you were new within that fire career. And tell us a little bit about why, like some of the symptoms you first noticed. You were, I believe, around 32 at the time,
Yeah,
which is similar to my age. And I see a lot of similarities in the way that you describe what you went through a little bit in mine. And I think that's why we clicked and connected and how we actually met. But walk us through kind of
yeah.
when that started, how you and I happened to you know to come together and form our two minds to figure this out together in a way, and you sparking me as a catalyst to get where I'm at here. So
Absolutely. I mean, we can rewind a little bit prior to that, and how I came to have found you is, so, I can talk to you about, you know, how this all progressed, but, I think we actually met in a SSRI support group on Facebook,
yeah,
because we were both, getting just thrown prescription medications with no, like, you know, it kind of, you kind of, when I saw you, and you see a lot of these people in the support groups, and I know a lot of people are sick, but there's a lot of people in these support groups that are like kind of professional patients. You know, they're always in a doctor's office, they're always sick with something.
mm-hmm.
And then I see you, and like you're a young like guy that, you know, I think it was, you know, a picture of you, your wife, and your dog, and I was like, man, you know, this sucks. You know, like it looks like, you know, I'm like, I got to reach out to this guy because, you know, because I think we were maybe both taking the same thing, and you're
Yeah,
kind of saying the same side effects, and the you know how they tell you about the starting an SSRI, all the stuff you're going through. Um, but I guess I should rewind and maybe talk about the onset of everything, and maybe the story of how this all came to be, and how I maybe came to actually meet you, because I can tell you the date, you know,
yeah,
like,
walk us through that leading up
sure.
to the point where we started to get introduced. I think that
Yeah,
would be
so
helpful.
it's about August of 2019. Um, I go camping, you know, I camp with some friends. I'm not an avid camper, but at this point, I think, you know, I went out with a friend of mine, and woke up, and I had the tick like right underneath my like right pectoral area, like right almost in the armpit area. Um, Growing up, I've had ticks, and I've just pulled them off, thought nothing of it. I don't. when you're in the South, you know that Lyme disease exists, and basically what they tell you is you get like achy joints, and then you're just like, oh, it's nothing. It's not, nobody talks about it here. You just know it exists, especially if you're ever in the scouts or anything like that. They kind of touch on it a little bit, but it's just not something that really exists here. It does, but nobody knows about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I certainly didn't think anything about it because I pulled off several in my town, and this one was no different. I was just like, oh man, this I have this tick, and they're just gross because you just feel there's something on you, and so I do everything wrong pulling it off me. Everything they teach you not to do.
Most people do.
I think I squeezed it and pulled it by the back, and then
Oh gosh,
I had to pull the head out with tweet, and it was just everything I did was wrong. But I didn't think.
Remember what kind of tick it was?
I think it was just American like dog tick, just straight brown. And
but you didn't save it or like study it or anything. You just
I just tossed it.
Yeah.
Like I said, I don't think anything about it. It's off me. Next day, I wake up with the rash, not a bullseye rash, just an irritation, severe itching, redness all the way down. Pretty much that whole chest area, which is a little concerning. I was like, well, and then it looked like a mosquito bite, and I just kind of let it go, and maybe later that day it was completely gone. So I was like, no problem. I just didn't even think about Lyme disease at all. It just didn't even cross my mind. Out of sight, out of mind, not a problem. A couple months later, I go get married. Everything's fine for a couple months. I don't have anything at all.
No symptoms up to that point.
No, nothing at all. So I started my paramedic school, and it was like a dark room, kind of theater seating, and we were looking at like a projector screen, taking notes and everything. And all of a sudden, like my vision goes completely blurry. Cannot see the teacher, cannot see anything on the wall. I can feel my heart beating so hard that it just feels like it's beating out of my chest. I have an Apple Watch. I look at my Apple Watch. I'm beating at about 190 beats per minute. I'm just like, and it just comes out of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought maybe it was like the mount. You're just like, what is going on? I was drinking like coffee a lot, and it's just it was a night class, so I went there with a Bang energy drink, and then I'm also drinking coffee. So I thought maybe I just completely did something, but I just couldn't explain the vision stuff, and I get out and kind of walk around the hall, and the fluorescent lighting is, I can't even comprehend. I can't think. I don't remember my name, and I don't know if it was like panic or what. So I just kind of excused myself from class. I didn't even tell anybody I was leaving. I just didn't go back in. I grabbed my stuff and I left. I got in my truck. And I couldn't even figure out how to get home. Like, it was just crazy. And I had to put in the GPS on my phone on how to get to my house. And I was like, there is something severely wrong. And I do not know what it is. I was like, is this a panic attack? I've never dealt with any kind of anxiety or depression before. So I've never had panic attacks or anxiety attacks, but I was thinking maybe this is a panic attack. I was calling my wife and telling her, I was like, I can't remember how to get home. And, she's probably like, what in the world is he talking about? Like, he's out of his mind.
Right.
And I finally get home through my GPS. And I show up, and I'm like white as a ghost, and like sweating, and I'm telling what's going on. And then I believe like I had it it sounds bad. I think I had a Xanax sitting around my house. I don't know how I got it.
Luckily, yeah.
It wasn't prescribed to me, and I don't. This is not, I'm not a doctor, and I'm not telling anybody
Sure.
to eat it.
But you were feeling desperate. It was an
I,
emergency for you, and
I was like, well, I'm having a panic attack, and I was like, I think I have a Xanax, because I think I've had some, problem. Like, I had where somebody had given me a Xanax. I never took it because I was kind of scared and I never taken one. But I was like, I kind of had it for safekeeping, just in case it, I had that
sure.
happen again. Um, and I found it and I took it, and all my symptoms went away. Like, I was like, oh man, maybe it was a panic attack. So everything's fine now. I'm back. I go to sleep. I wake up the next day, and I'm just kind of reflecting on what's going on. And I was like, I don't know, I can't explain that happening. And people are like, oh yeah, these panic attacks, they're terrible. And then I think the next day we're going to the beach, like, so we're at the beach, and I have it again, like on the beach, like the most relaxing place on earth. Here I am in this full blown panic mode again. And it was, it never ended the whole time I was there. I was in a complete panic attack mode the whole time I was, and then I was like, this something is seriously wrong.
Mm,
And then I make a, appointment with my primary care, who's actually a family member. Um, and they prescribed me Klonopin and SSRI, and they
right.
start talk. They think I might be stressed because I just got married and this change. I was
Hey, I
like, well,
did too. I had just gotten married as well and
yeah,
moved.
but I
Common
didn't have.
theme there.
My wife and I had lived. Nothing changed except now we're wearing wedding rings. Like that, I was
Hmm.
like, look, nothing's changed. I'm not stressed about anything, or anything like that. But it got to the point where I was taking these SSRIs and I was taking these benzodiazepines, and that was the only thing that was helping. I was taking Klonopins 3 times a day, and
Hmm.
almost getting borderline addict. I mean, I can say that I had an addiction, just because it was the only thing that was. It would. I had these weird symptoms where I felt off balance and like I was walking on water, and I just could not explain it to anybody. I went through these rabbit holes of having a thing called vestibular neuritis, which is inner ear damage to the nerve. Because when you research that, uh, it described a lot of my symptoms. So I went to a lot of ENTs, and like they would do the tests and everything, and everything's fine. My primary care, who is my cousin, they do blood work. They're testing my everything, like my testosterone levels and everything. All blood work comes back fine. So here I am, don't know what's going on with me. All I know is I have, Celexa or Lexapro and Klonopins, and I'm not getting a lot of results. The only thing that's giving me any kind of results is taking these Klonopins. But you know, everybody says these things take time. Give it a second, it'll take time. So, uh, while going through all this, I get on Facebook, and I find that SSRI support group, because I was like, well,
Right.
maybe ask questions to other people doing this. They'll kind of reassure me that, because it seemed like every time I would take some of these antidepressants, it got way worse. And, um, nothing was helping. So I kind of went to
What
one.
were your family and friends thinking the whole time? I mean, did you
Uh,
have people that go, "Oh, you're just," I mean, did
everybody,
anybody understand kind of, or they're
no,
just like, you just,
everybody thought I was losing my mind.
yep.
Any medical professional that I went to thought I was losing my mind. My family thought I was losing my mind. They wanted to check me into like a 30-day program,
Hmm.
like commit me basically
Yeah.
medically. And I was like, no, and so I was thinking, it all comes back to having that tick bite. Everything was fine until I had that. And I had actually brought up Lyme a couple times to some of these doctors, and they completely would dismiss that completely. There's like there's no way you have Lyme disease. They're like, well, did you have a bullseye rash? I was like, no.
And you saw possibly what, 5, 6 doctors before you figured out
Yeah, I
potentially it was
saw
Lyme?
like primary care. I saw a couple ENTs for like what I was thinking was vestibular neuritis. And I went and what really kind of tipped the scale is I had my appendix rupture. So it's just like a complete body meltdown. Like, I don't know. I went from playing sports, working out every day, mountain biking. I had like depression because I lost all interest in everything that I love to do. And, I have a laundry list of things that I love to do. And I just did not feel like doing any of them. I sat in the house all day. I was, researching all my symptoms, like every symptom. I would just research it and go down these rabbit holes. Because, you're so desperate to find something because you just can't fathom being somebody that, you're in super good shape. You liked having all these passion. You had all this passion for life. And now you just don't feel like doing anything. Like, it's just definitely like you're definitely in depression. And, thinking about it now, I'm just like, man, it's like, I can't tell you, like,
and during the time when you were taking all those tests from your doctors describing your symptoms, telling them your backstory, letting them know like, hey, I was always a strong guy, this and that.
Oh yeah.
Did anybody suggest let's try a Lyme disease test or a co-infection test of some sort?
They did.
Of the conventional doctors that you saw?
They did, but they do like the Western blot thing, which is like, I think it was created in the 70s and it has never changed. That came back negative, so I was like, okay, I guess it's not Lyme disease. But that was kind of like towards the front end. When I brought it up the first time, because I kept going, everything was fine. I was bitten by this tick though, and you don't think it could be something regarding that. They're like, no, but we'll test just to see. The After the appendix thing, I was really like really concerned, and just kind of like I was kind of giving up on like conventional medicine. I was like, every time I go, I get prescribed an SSRI, thinking that I'm having psychiatric issues, which I am, but it stems from nothing that I can think of. The only time that I was going in a direction, I found like a naturopathic MD, and this was kind of like my first person who sat me down and listened to me, because most of the doctors, you'll talk to them for 5 to 10 minutes and go over your symptoms and everything, and then they basically say, well, it could be we're going to do some blood work, we're going to check all this and this, and then 5 minutes you're done. They call you the next day, hey, your blood work's fine.
Right.
Wow, okay.
Common story we hear over and over and over. Yep.
I don't
Absolutely.
I don't even recognize myself in the mirror. I was in such a depressive state that I was like, I'm gonna die from this. And we keep guns in the house, and they would never cross my mind, but it was scary that my mind even went there. Thinking that I'm good to nobody in this
Right.
condition.
Nobody believes you. You're told it's all in your head.
Yeah, I'm not a husband. I'm not a I'm not a son. All I can think about is like my ailments. And I just remember, I go into these doctor's appointments and just I had clothes that barely fit from all the weight I lost. I went from like 200 pounds to down to like maybe 160 within like months, because it's just straight. Go ahead.
During the timing of all this, now when you and I were talking and you sparked it in me, this was around COVID lockdowns, right? When this is all kind of taking place. And so we had to contend with that as well.
Oh yeah.
So the medical system was jammed up and people were going crazy. And this wasn't something that anybody wanted to think about on top of COVID, even though
Yeah.
the similarities of why people get sick from both
Right.
of Lyme and COVID are so, there's so many parallels.
Right.
How did that affect things too, with like being able to get into places, or like
No.
worrying about getting COVID on top of it, and then worrying about having to get the vaccine, which is
Oh
crazy controversial, of course. It was so stressful, and it was all happening at the same time for me as you. So
yeah. Well, the thing is I had already had my diagnosis and treatment plan by the time COVID really took off.
sure.
Um, so I guess we can go back to where I was going to the naturopath. They sat me down and they had like a little bit more of an accurate test. I can't remember what it was called, than a Western blot. And I was telling them, I was like, I feel fine. Everything was great until I was bitten by this tick. And they were the first people to acknowledge that, like, well, maybe you have it. They didn't dismiss me.
And this
You
was
know,
in Alabama. Sorry if I just want to clarify.
in Alabama, Birmingham, Alabama. It was just
Yeah,
a
where it's
natural.
very not common,
He was a
really.
medical doctor. So he had conventional medicine practice, but he is a naturopathic medical doctor. He likes to find more root causes to things, and um but he did not know a lot about Lyme, and he was like the first to kind of admit that. He was very going, I don't know anything about it, but we'll do anything we can for you. It was just one of those places, everything was kind of out of pocket, and insurance covered some of the tests and everything, but pretty much all their treatment is kind of like anti-yeast stuff, and
Hmm.
there's no, I mean, I think they're wonderful. I couldn't say enough about them because they were the first people to like sit down and listen to me and take me serious. Well, I took the test and like it was two bands. It was it was a band and a half on something. So I was
Yeah.
like, okay, you know,
Here's a clue.
interesting, um, but I didn't know where to go with it. And I happened to be talking to like a relative of mine. Um, and they they were like, you have Lyme. They're like, you have Lyme disease. They have Lyme disease, and they're like, you have to get on iLads. You have to go to their website and
Hmm.
find a LLMD. And I was like, what are you talking about?
So for those not familiar, potentially, iLads, can you describe that? I understand what it is. I looked at it
Yeah,
too.
iLads is there's two different things. There's International Association for like Lyme disease, which is
The
the one.
IDSA,
Yeah, that's the one that's the 2 weeks
correct.
of oxycycline and you're fine. Other than that, it's fibromyalgia or psychiatric issues, and that's actually uh, where mainstream medicine gets their information from.
Yep.
iLads is the controversial uh, long-term antibiotic therapy.
It's a spin-off advocacy group, I guess you could say, or
Right.
whatever, of IDSA, from the people
Yeah,
that actually.
using because I was they're trying to tell me about the whole controversy with treatments on treating Lyme disease, and they were just like, you need to go see this doc. You need to go in there and find out how to get in touch with that doctor that I had to go to. I can't. They're like, I don't have his name or number. So I go on iLads and put in my information, and they don't even give me the doctor's name. It's like, this is Doctor K with his number. It was like
Because
trying to
it's,
body on the black web or something.
I know,
Um,
yeah.
and you're just like, okay, Dr. K, he's in Tennessee, which is the closest LLMD to where I am, was about 2.5 hours away.
According to that site, right?
Right. And I was desperate. I'd do anything. And I like made the drive to Tennessee. And I had done a little bit of research, but I remember um going to the office, and he had a big poster with that documentary Bitten on the wall.
Hmm.
I was like, oh, I think I'm in the right hands. You know, like
That's a good sign.
yeah, I had watched that, and then on the desk he had Horowitz books. He had Dr. Marty Ross, and then Dr. Rawls, and just pretty much all those mainstream LLMDs that are kind of more public with it.
Hmm.
Um, and I was like, oh, good, and they did the IGenics test. And then when they did the IGenics test, it it lit up like a Christmas tree, positive for Lyme and co-infection Babesia. So now, now we have our diagnosis.
Mm. Well, I
So
bet that. How did you feel when you got that news?
I felt relieved that now, like, I'm not crazy, and now I have something that I can tell my family, um, to show that I'm not crazy. Like, I was right all along. I told everybody, told all these doctors after that, everything was terrible after that tick bite. I was fine till then. So that gave a little bit more light into it, but it's just like then you start kind of now, okay, now you're focused on this, and then you kind of like look into it, and you see a lot of these people that have been dealing with it for years, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't do this for years.
Hmm.
Like what what do I do? And then this doctor, he has a very, very, very aggressive but proven approach to it. He definitely believes in antibiotic therapy along with herbals and along with, you know, pro and prebiotics. And
Hmm.
he's treated so many people, and I was just kind of going, oh, how, and how did you get into treating people with Lyme? And he's like, well, my daughter had it and nobody was there to
Yeah,
treat her, and because
personal story.
he was just a family medicine doctor. And then when you go in there, you see all the stuff he treats, and then you start kind of getting to that Lyme community, and you're like, oh yeah, because he treats a lot of these other things that could be Lyme related. That it's a
Hmm.
great, and
Did he talk to you about anything to coincide with that, as far as like comorbidity type issues such as mold, biotoxin illness, heavy metals,
it,
or was he just strictly like, let's focus on Lyme and see how we do?
he's like, let's focus on Lyme. Nothing about the mold or anything like that at first. Um, he definitely, it was more like getting into the spirochetes and just
Yeah,
kind of picking them out of my body. So I think I was on about four different, I was on two different antibiotics, an antibacterial and an anti-malarial, and taking it all at the same time with herbals. Like you couldn't feel any worse. And
yeah.
he told he told me that he's like, you will feel worse before you feel better. um so I was, you know I think I had like a whole calendar approach to everything.
Mm.
um it was real hard to follow because I was barely in the right mind. um
And at the time,
Follow
as far as
this.
your personal life, you were still trying to accomplish certain things as far as your training and everything too. Is that correct?
No,
Or
I was
or did you completely stop everything?
really unemployed. I had gotten a job in sales, and it got to the point where I couldn't go to work anymore, and I had to let the guy that I was working for know that, like, I don't know what's wrong with me, man, but I cannot, I can't continue. So at the point, my wife was taking care of me and taking care of all the finances, because and because I literally could not do anything for
So
myself.
you were 33 years old, newly
33,
married, and you
couldn't do.
essentially were told by the people you trusted, the doctors, that and nothing's wrong with you. Here's some pills, go home, chill
Mhm.
out.
Yep.
And you were basically disabled at 33 as someone who was a firefighter. Is that kind of what?
I hadn't made it to the firefighting yet.
Not yet, but now today you are, and you were, prior to that, you were active, a weightlifter, you did so many
Everything,
things outdoors, you were a strong man, like, and then all of a
all
sudden, boom.
all those things are gone from me.
Yep.
And
Everything you thought was down the drain just because of a tick
I
bite.
had no interest in doing. All that I could do is be obsessed about, well, at first it was obsessed what was wrong with me. Then it got to being obsessed with getting better. Um, so, and then, being real balanced on everything, cleaned up my diet a whole lot. But at one point I would eat anything. I was losing so much weight. I go to these doctor's office and I'd be ashamed to get on the scale. I remember like wearing like my Merrill shoes and long pants, like just to not
Hmm.
see lower than 170 pounds on the scale. Cause it's just when you're used to being like 200 pounds and you see that, it's just, you think you're dying. So I just remember eating like, and when you had I would have an appetite for a short period of time during the day, and during that little window, I would eat like a pint of ice cream and just anything that I could find that had like a lot of calories in it, just so
Hmm.
I had something in my system that like was calorically dense. Um, it didn't even matter if it was bad for me or not. I didn't care. I just needed something, and um I was, you literally forget who you are, and my personality, I get super obsessed about things, that pertain to me. Like it's like I'll do the worst things, like go on the web and research every symptom.
You want to know it all, right? You don't want to have to
Absolutely.
turn away and forget there might be something you missed.
Right. So I started
How
this.
about okay? Well,
Go
one
ahead.
other thing though. Now that you had this diagnosis, you kind of had a vision of where you go, roadmap, how to get better. You could see a potential light at the end of the tunnel, even though you didn't feel it might ever get there. Probably still questioning things. How was your support system around you? Were there rallies for you? Was there friends and family calling, helping donate? Was there, we talk about illnesses like cancer a lot, where there's tremendous community support when you have cancer. I'm not trying to diminish that in any way, because I know people that are going through horrific battles with cancer as
Right.
well, and it's certainly not something to be taken lightly. But because of the lack of awareness around it, people think that, oh, you're just going to take some meds
Right.
and you'll be fine, right?
Yeah.
So that was to me, that was one of the worst parts about it, was trying to
Right.
convey to people just how sick I was.
Yeah.
So how was that experience for you? I mean, did
Well,
people
just like,
believe you?
they're like, oh, well, now you got the medication, so you should be better in no time, like, and I was like, well, I hope so. I really don't know the path I was about to be on and how long it was going to take, which, and I think in retrospect, it didn't take very long for me to get back um, to some level. I think once I was on this antibiotic therapy, I was taking, minocycline, because the reason he chooses minocycline over doxycycline is because it crosses the blood-brain barrier,
Mm-hmm.
because it's encapsulated in like a fat molecule, so it was able to get in there and be very aggressive. And I think I was like on rivampin, which is what they treat like tuberculosis with. I mean,
It's a hard one.
I was on some heavy, and Bactrim. I think I was taking ivermectin. I know I for sure was, because I have it in the house, and I was like, oh, well, look, COVID, and I got ivermectin. Awesome.
We might have to
But
censor that part out. No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, I know, right? We'll get the whole thing canceled.
Uh,
So, I was taking that, and I got to where I was like able to like do some construction work. And which was crazy is like when I would do construction work, all my symptoms would go away. Like I would get into, and then I was watching, like, I think it was like a Joe Rogan or something like that, on one of the guys on his podcast that had Lyme disease, and he was talking about his, he could barely move, and his friends took him out surfing,
I heard that one too.
and he didn't want to go, and then he just kept forcing himself to do it and go and go, and he got into what was called like a flow state.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all I can really say about this, is like, because when I would return home, all my symptoms would just show back up, but when I was like on the job site and building a deck or something, they all went away. And I just all I could describe it to you was like a flow state, like it was
Yeah.
neuroplasticity, like your brain, when you work your brain, everything goes away. And I wasn't focused on being sick. I forgot that I was even sick. All I knew is like, I got to get this deck done. I got to get it perfect. I got, so you got where you didn't want to go home. I just like, I'll work, you work till I work from 6 a.m. to like 7 p.m. sometimes. I just, cause I knew when I go home and I get relaxed, all my symptoms show back up.
Mhm.
And like the tinnitus, the vision problems, and at this point, after I was on antibiotic therapy, and he does what's called a pulsing method,
Okay.
whereas where you're on a certain stack of antibiotics and herbals, and then he changes them every 3 months because the Lyme germ, it gets used to the antibiotic
It's
and knows how
extremely intelligent.
right, it knows how to avoid it. So once it kind of 3 months, he just, I think through trial and error, because like none of this stuff is tested. It's just he's done it so long. He's been treating Lyme for 30 years. That he's like, this is what's worked.
Yeah.
And he's very confident in his treatment too, and that's what gave me confidence that I was going to get better. He was like, "You will get better. I'm good at what I'm doing," and he just basically was just like, sit back and watch, hold my beer, and
Yep. It's good to
and
have someone that has that confidence, though.
yeah, he
That's
was just,
that's treating you.
and he was like, he turned to my wife and he's like, he's very sick, but he's gonna get better. She
Yeah.
looked,
You need that too. Like when you're in that state.
yeah, he goes, you will be running, you'll be working out, you'll be weightlifting in a year. Like he knew it on the head of like when I was going to recover. And I was like, oh wow, like that's
Yeah.
because I,
Motivating.
I'm next to death. I'm 170 pounds soaking wet. I tell them, I was like 200 pounds of like, I was about 10% body fat, and now I'm like just melted away. My face, I had a beard, like because in a beard I wasn't trying to grow one. I just didn't have any motivation to shave my face.
Yeah.
I
And
barely had a
were you testing for co-infections again and Lyme after a certain amount of time, or just
he does.
going by symptoms?
Yeah, he is big on like he goes, you just need to one test, and you go by how you feel. And he goes,
Mhm.
by the end of it, you should not have any symptoms. So we would pulse the antibiotics, and then when disulfiram came on to the scene, he put me on that, and that's kind
How
of
long
what
into it do you think that was? And
I think I treated the Lyme for probably 8 to 9 months
yeah, so you were on
after diagnosis.
antibiotics, like triple combination antibiotic, double, triple
Oh yeah,
pulsing for 8 months straight.
8 months.
And what's recommended by the CDC is 2 weeks, 2 to 4 weeks at the most, and that's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Doxycycline. So,
That
it's
I like it makes me so frightened that like that's their recommendation, and then I'm like, wow, you can't really trust, and then he has to practice outside of insurance because he can't jeopardize his medical license by
mm,
he has to treat you, and then insurance only pays for a certain amount of antibiotics too, so then you have to start paying the full price out of pocket, which antibiotics are pretty notoriously cheap, but then when you have to pay for it out of pocket with no insurance, it gets up there, and then the pharmacy starts kind of getting questionable about what's going on here. Why are you on your fifth month of like revamping and Bactrim? Like
yeah.
what's wrong with you? I can only imagine what the farm techs were thinking. Like this dude,
Jesus.
and so I'm treating that, and then like I said, the flow state. I was just working this construction job, and then I had always
Was there so you mentioned you were doing probiotics, you had some glutathione treatments.
Mm.
herbals. Can you say a little bit more about, because I know that the knee-jerk reaction, which is what I had right away after talking to you about
Mm.
how much antibiotics were helping, is, oh, I have Lyme, let's nuke it out with antibiotics. I got to get
Right.
this stuff killed off.
Right.
But there's a lot more to it usually. I mean, maybe some people that does work.
Yeah.
And but can you say anything else that might have assisted diet,
I did.
type of exercise, glutathione, all that stuff?
Yeah, I think the glutathione was huge in the whole detox protocol because when you kill the Lyme germ, that I would think that if anything, support your liver because your liver is your natural detox. You know, they sell you a bunch of stuff that says detox this, detox that, but nothing is detoxing unless your liver is not full capacity,
Mm-hmm.
100%. And my thing is, if you have anything wrong with you, make sure your liver is like fully functioning. You know, get a liver test, get on milk thistle and liposomal. You need to have liposomal glutathione,
Mm-hmm.
um, because I took over the counter glutathione that you could get at any like Costco or box store, but I didn't get much result until I started getting Dr. Marty Ross his liposomal glutathione that's a sublingual, and I could definitely tell a difference.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I started noticing my symptoms started to start lighting, they started being less noticeable when I would do my antibiotic therapy and really hit the glutathione. I would do what was called, like, I would have what was called a Herx reaction,
Mm-hmm.
which is what they tend to, it's a term used for when they kill the Lyme germ and it's being removed from your body. You have like a severe fever episode, and it's like all your symptoms are on go.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and after a couple days, less and less symptoms is what I was starting to notice. And then a couple, after I was treating this for about 3 or 4 months, I had forgotten I even applied to the fire department here. I get a call saying we need you to do like a physical fitness test. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I'd been able to put on a couple of pounds of weight. And this was like, I think in the fall of 2020, like COVID was at its highest peak.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, we need you to come out, wear a mask, and come run 3 miles, you know.
And what
And I'm,
percentage better do you think you were at that point?
oof, I was probably at like maybe 60. I was able to not take the benzodiazepine because that was one thing that doctor really was like, you need to get off that stuff, and he kind of it helped me tear off of it because I was taking about 3 of them a day to I didn't know what to do. So he had a tier method of getting me off of them. And I was able to leave the house at that point. But like I said, I was working the construction stuff, and I was kind of like I was putting myself in more uncomfortable situations where I had like a lot of social anxiety, which I never had before, but somehow I developed it when I had Lyme disease. I just hated leaving the house. I was so scared to leave the house. Um, and then, I was like, well, I'm just going to force myself into an uncomfortable situation and see what happens. I was like, if I don't get this job, whatever. I'm going to try.
Mm-hmm.
And I did. And everything, I passed, and I don't know how I did it, but I just went out there and just ran and ran and ran and just loaded on antibiotics running. It's not very fun, but
Yeah. I bet you didn't feel great after.
no, no, like you have when you do a lot of exertion with Lyme, you feel it big
Yep.
time,
Yep.
and you
You have
definitely
setbacks.
do. But I felt good. I felt accomplished. Like every little thing was a little goal to me. Like when at first, when I was at like 20 or 30% better, I would just walk around my block, and that was the only thing I did that day, and I considered that like a
Mm-hmm.
big victory, walking my dog around the block.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
something.
Somebody told me a good
all like
A,
that.
a good way to put it is you have to shrink your world. So you have to
Uh,
really take everything away that's stimulation around you and let your body completely relax so that your nervous system can calm down enough to be able to allow your body to use its natural healing properties to heal. Because if you're in constant fight or flight, which we are, because our nervous system is under attack by bacteria that is so smart and hard to see and detect, that it's a self-perpetuating thing, and it's like
right.
it's trying to get you to stay, that your immune system is crashed. The Lyme bacteria does not want you to rest, and it wants
Yeah.
to be able to just keep you alive, and it's very insidious in that nature.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's just like you said, shrink your world. Just try something, just anything. And like I said, make little goals for yourself to climb out of the hole. You're not going to feel good doing it. It does
Mm-hmm.
not feel treating it. Sometimes treating it felt worse than having it. Sometimes, I didn't have much of the psychological stuff anymore. As I was treating it, that was kind of my first, one of the worst symptoms I had. Besides all that, was the inability to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
It, that was the most insidious thing. I'd be on 3 days no sleep. I just could not sleep. I could not get.
Wired and
Um,
tired, right?
it's the worst feeling. You feel like trapped in your body
Did you do anything to help you assist with sleep? Did you take melatonin or Ambien or something?
all day. It would put me to sleep for maybe an hour, hour and a half. Then I
Yeah.
wake. I'd be wide awake again, um, and not necessarily in a panic state or a depressive state. Just I could not sleep. I could close my eyes, but nothing, couldn't do anything. And you can't really force yourself to sleep. But I took everything you could imagine. I tried to do Ambien, try to do melatonin, um, anything.
And you can't heal if you can't get sleep. That's the paradox.
Yeah,
And so
yeah.
you have to be able to find a way to
Well,
sleep.
you
And
have that, cerebral spinal fluid that's supposed to run through your brain and kind of wash everything
mm-hmm.
down to your liver to process itself out. And if you can't sleep, your body won't let you do that. So that was one of the first things I was like, kind of like a big victory to me. Was one time I went to sleep at my normal time at like 9, and then I woke up at like 2 a.m. I was like, oh my gosh, I slept from
2 a.m.
9 to 2 a.m. That's a huge step for
Yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a couple hours of sleep.
Well, let me ask you this too. And on top of that, when the doctors are giving you prescription psychiatric medication, a lot of those can have side effects of either being more sleepy, more tired, or more wound up and unable to sleep. Did the disulfiram, I want to go in a little bit more on that, because the disulfiram has been a hot topic of back and forth on whether this is for a while it was deemed the potential miracle
Mhm.
medicine for Lyme disease, but it carried a lot of potential negative drawbacks, such as being unable to have any kind of alcohol
Right.
whatsoever. Tell us about that. Like, I'm sure people are dying to hear of these kind of experimental treatments and I haven't seen lately what's new on it. It's been 3 or 4 years since I looked into it, but
Yeah.
I considered trying it myself, but
Yeah.
I was too scared. I was too scared.
Yeah.
So maybe talk a little bit about that. I mean, how did that
Sure.
look for you?
Well, I like that. I went from, taking 12 pills down to one. That was a
Mm-hmm.
huge plus. And there's really no, except for I would say test it. For me, I had no problem eating some things, and then some people do. Um, you know, I didn't drink alcohol or anything. I didn't want to like really test it, but some of the stuff that people like to, that if they ate ketchup and all that stuff, that they would,
For those that
have a
don't know,
yeah.
what is the reason behind disulfiram? What's
So
its
disulfiram,
prescription nature?
yeah, disulfiram is the I guess the medical term for antabuse, which is a drug used for alcoholics that would basically give you a very sick reaction um, anytime you came into contact with alcohol. And I think psychologically, um, it would be like a Pavlov or something, like, anytime your body would think of alcohol, you didn't want that because you knew what the reaction was going to be.
Okay.
But it started as an anti-malarial even before that. So
Okay.
it was it's if you look at its origins, it started as an anti-malarial when they were building the Panama Canal. Um, so around the early 19th century era.
Hmm.
Um, so it's been around a long time, and then I guess they found it more profitable with doing the antibuse. Um, Drugs are all about marketing and stuff like that. So if they can use it for this, they'll use it for that. If it's going to fetch a dollar, so it seemed like a antibuse. And I guess now, like they wanted one of the doctors, that uh, wanted to test. They're just saying, let's try something for Lyme. Let's just have a Lyme germ and throw anything the kitchen sink at it and see what kills it aggressively. That's not an anti.
Right.
And I think they've tested a couple things, and I think disulfiram gave the best in vitro results, which is in vitro is outside the body. So then they started kind of doing some test groups, and I think they had a pretty good success rate with it, with a reduction of symptoms. So, um,
Did you experience side effects?
none, no
Yeah,
side
because
effects.
that was concern. I heard concerns that there is a chance that you could have psychosis or something, some kind of psychological effects from it. I don't know how prevalent that is, but I know that kind of scared me away from wanting to try it. Although I
Right.
would have tried it if absolutely nothing else would have worked for me, but other things did work for me. So, like I say, everyone's different in their chemistry and their biology.
That's the thing,
So,
is I can't tell you how you will experience it because everybody experiences it a different way. Some people are super sensitive to some medications. I thought maybe like I'm a little bit more sensitive to antibiotics, I guess, because it seemed, and I don't know if it was treating the germ but it seemed like everything that I took, I like instantly felt like all the side effects that I described. Um, and disulfiram, I never really had any side effects, um, other than, and I would eat soy sauce. I would have anything fermented. It didn't matter. And nothing happened. But like I said, I didn't really test the alcohol thing, but I think somebody did give me something by accident that had alcohol in it, and it still didn't mess with me. So yeah,
sure.
like everybody's chemistry is different. And then you hear somebody, like I said, eats ketchup and they're like on their deathbed,
Hmm.
because ketchup is fermented. I did not know that,
Yeah.
Um,
So it is one of those things where it's like it can be like extremely potent
right,
treatment for late stage Lyme disease, chronic Lyme disease,
right.
but you have to be very calculated in how you take it, and
Yeah.
so that's one thing people need to be aware of, if anyone's going to pursue looking into that as a sort of a later stage line of treatment, or even an initial, because you
I would
took it
say,
fairly earlier
yeah,
on in your journey. So, because you, how long did you take it for
I
exactly?
told from for about the last 3 months. Like, so it was like about a year long treatment. It was, 3 months. It was like broken up into quarters. So 3 months on something, 3 months on something else, 3 months on something else, and then the last 3 months, disulfiram. And I would say that after that, I still had some stuff, but I was wanted to touch on one thing that helped out a lot was when I did get hired and I was in like recruit school for the fire department, and we would do these like very physically demanding activities that, you sweat profusely, being in turnout gear, and you're running 3 or 4 miles, and it was like in the heat of the summer. Um, After I would sweat, I felt much better. I was on the
You
antibiotic.
detoxing the toxins.
Exactly. And then, you hear about a lot of people doing the saunas and stuff like that. And I was like, maybe there's something to it. But for me, I never went to any sauna, but the running, and the, just to, and basically I didn't have a choice. I had to do it. Like if it was up to me and I had a choice, I wouldn't have ran, like I would not have ran, but it was like, I had to have a job. Like I was I was unemployed for a long time, and I really needed to get this job because I really needed the health insurance and benefits it brought.
Of course.
Yeah. If we're not millionaires, but we have really good benefits medically.
Mhm.
And I was like, I really, I gotta, I gotta to play catch up because my wife had supported me for that whole, for almost a year of our finances, and thank God for that. Otherwise we've been in a lot of trouble. And I know that's like one of the bad things about this disease is it could cost people a lot of money, especially just getting that diagnosis, and then once you do, how do you treat it? Because most LLMDs are you don't use your insurance. So I know this guy. He was about $300 a visit. I only saw him 2 or 3 times in the whole course of the whole thing. So it wasn't like a major expense. If you think about it, but it was for my life, and you can't put a price
Yeah.
tag.
How do you quantify that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a
And
lot. It's your story is interesting because you have I'm sure it resonates with a lot of people. It resonates with me, and it gives people hope that you can do things in a simple manner. And because there's people that you see on the forums that are like, hey, I did this treatment, then I went to mold, then I went and looked into heavy metals, then I went and looked into this, and then I've got to do all these steps first, and it gets so completely overwhelming
very
that most people just want to throw their hands up and say, I
right.
can't, like, just whatever happens happens. And
Yeah.
so I think it's good to highlight stories like yours because everyone's stories or everyone's like journey back to health is so unique,
Yeah.
and people need to hear that not everyone's going to be so extreme where you have to go through years and years and years of mistreatments or whatever.
Right.
And there can be simple solutions, which it's not necessarily simple, but you know what I mean. It's not as complex as taking 40 pills a
Right.
day and supplements and doing this certain protocol kind of thing. And so I was envious of your path back to healing because mine was so drastically different in how I approached mine. But it definitely was good to like know that there's so many like there's other ways of handling this, and there's always a different option to explore.
Right. And I would say, I'm very conventionally minded. I say like, I have a kind of a little distrust of conventional medicine these days, but, I still definitely believe in antibiotics, and I definitely believe in, when I go to a doctor, I believe that having that MD does carry a whole lot of weight.
Mm-hmm.
Because I do know that, with Lyme, there's a lot of charlatans in this disease that make a lot of money off this disease. You get, and I don't want to say anything, but you have a lot of these natural, and these chiropractors, which is, chiropracting's fine. I don't want to like do that, but they'll give you these treatment plans that are like $30,000, and these like ozone therapies, and which is fine. I think that everybody's entitled to their own treatment. To
Mm-hmm.
me, I like to see, I like to take something that's kind of a proven commodity, um, and that's been around for a long time.
Well, and you were sick for maybe how long prior to that? Some people are sick for 20, 30, 40 years
Right.
before they get a diagnosis. And there's a lot of cleanup. So some
Oh
of that
yeah.
ozone stuff, whatever,
Yeah.
it's almost like you kind of have to just grin and bear it because
Uh,
you were sick for so long, you're not going to heal overnight.
yeah.
And you were a younger, your body is primed waiting for the chance to heal. But you take somebody who's in their 60s, 70s and
Oh,
older,
it's completely
they're gonna have a whole different experience.
absolutely. There's so many different ways to treat this. It's like, I just for me and my comfort is like, I believe in like the conventional way, and I like kind of somebody drawing up a plan for me. I don't really like it to be in my hands. because I know if it got in my hands, I'd be doing all kinds of stuff like,
Like me.
uh, you, who knows what kind of things I would try. But this doctor kind of had like a real proven method that was scheduled and very meticulous on it, and like really touched on it and was like, this is what I do. He doesn't have the same treatment for everybody, but he just goes, this is the way I do it. This has always worked. And I have tons of people that get better. He goes, I've got a guy that's, he had like a professional athlete that was going there. He's like, he's back to being that. I've got other doctors, I've got engineers, I've got everybody. They're all better now.
Mm-hmm.
You have to bear through it. And I was like, okay, I'm all ears, and I did everything he said, and it got me to where I am. Like, I owe my life to this guy. I wish I could say his name, but you can't.
He probably doesn't want to reveal, but it sounds like we'd love to have him on the podcast sometime if he's ever open.
I'd love it. Yeah. I mean, he's a great guy. And, so many people owe his life, owe him their life because, and, especially in these southern states where Lyme is never talked about, but he just goes, it's so funny that he has so many people from the same area that I'm at. They got bit in the same park that I was in. So he does his research and he kind of calculates geographically where all his patients are kind of coming from. Right. And I guess reports that to ILADS, and it looks, like the southern region is getting very, very bad with Lyme. And like he said, wherever there's deer, there's going to be Lyme. Any animal will go, there's going to be ticks to follow.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of my journey with the Lyme. And then now now I think I'm 100% better. I don't even think about having it anymore, to be honest with you. All my symptoms are gone. I'm back to pretty much everything's back to normal as far as my life goes. I've had a child, so lots of things have changed since this. Like, it's a journey looking back on, from where it all started. But I'm just thankful to, be able to reach out and, touch with other people and get in touch with you. And, you kind of let me share like everything.
Absolutely.
And, sure.
Well, I'm sure people listening there's probably people that are going to really resonate with what you're saying and maybe give them some new ideas, maybe give them hope. What other advice would you give to people who are in the thick of their Lyme disease or tick-borne illness battle? What would be some top recommendations? I mean, you've gone through what I think you could discertain of what you would say, but in your own words.
For me, and giving advice to other people, I wouldn't take it back because I got to, meet you, but I would stay maybe kind of away from some of those support groups, even though there are support groups. When you surround yourself with sick people, talk about their ailments all the time, all you can think about is you're sick.
Absolutely.
So that would be the first thing I would kind of axe out is, even though like I said, even though there's support groups, and my heart goes out to all those people in them because I know they're in real bad shape. But if you want to get better, you have to get away from it. Me anyway, like I could not, it was so liberating removing myself from some of those groups and not seeing that on Facebook, all these people talking about, wanting to kill themselves and like they're so bad and like nobody believes them. Broke now.
And when you're in a mentally bad place already,
man,
that mindset only fuels and makes your fears compound.
Yeah.
And so I felt the same way. I got too into them. It's easy to get sucked into them. It's incredible. I learned a lot. But I also thought at the end of it, I started learning about like the psychological reasoning behind being sick and listening to like, stuff about DNRS and like retraining your brain to not identify as a sick person. And like, it's crazy how powerful our minds are when we don't feed it that negativity or that.
There's some positive, if Dr. Marty Ross was a huge thing. Dr. Horror book, how think How Can I Get Better, or You Can Get Better. One of the, I can't remember what it's titled. Is really good. But you know, those two doctors, if you don't have really good access to LMD, they're as close as it comes to having one. And I believe they do like Skype and everything, if you're ever interested. But they do give like podcasts, these Q&As. The Dr. Marty Ross does a Q&A where you can kind of list things, and he's just kind of like, he gives feedback. I think I tuned into those Q&As every night as I was treating.
Mhm.
This is what I'm doing right now. You know, is this normal? Like, what, you know, and he gives great feedback, and he's just a real caring person. A lot of these LMDs are. And that would be my first thing, is to, you know, get on some positive YouTube, and get out of the support groups, uh, and just kind of be your own advocate.
Mhm.
And that was the thing that helped me the most, is just kind of liberating myself from being a sick person. Just because I'm not sick, I'd get out of my house. I would go out with my wife and do things like we used to do. And slowly, you know, I would get off WebMD. Don't try to diagnose yourself. Um,
Yeah.
and like when I was meeting you, I just look at what is your lifestyle like? Are you outdoors a lot? What are your hobbies? Do you hunt? Do you mountain bike? Do you hike? Are you in the woods a lot? If you are in the woods a lot, you know, there's a good chance that you have it.
Yeah. I'm
And
from
so,
Minnesota, and it's around the fifth or sixth worst state for Lyme disease, specifically Crow Wing County in Brainerd, Minnesota,
mm,
where my brother and his fiance live today. And I went back home. I now live in Kansas, right outside of Kansas City, Missouri, on the Kansas side. And it's very, you don't hear about it around here either, but they do have the Lone Star tick, which is pretty prevalent in Missouri. And I've had bites from it already,
well,
traveling and not even, I am so cautious when I go out, but I'm not to the point where I'm not going to enjoy something, but I'll be hyper aware of it while I'm in an environment that could potentially have the opportunity for more of exposure to ticks. And
right.
so I don't get as concerned now if I get a tick bite, because I know how to respond to it right away. Um, and so it's this is good to hear, probably for people in quote unquote your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
Because I have done things where I thought there's no way I'm getting a tick bite. I've got long socks on. I put lotion on that has certain anti-tick properties in it,
Sure.
and I still end up finding one. And I'm coming up with some of the reasoning of that potentially, and it might come down to blood type. And so for me, it's if you're outdoors, you're active, you want to fish, hunt, hike, camp, go to
Mm,
parks, you have a dog. It's not a matter of if, but when.
yeah.
And so I think like knowing how to respond to it. So how do you respond to that now? Have you had a tick bite since,
Total body.
or
Yeah, I haven't had one. I've found one. Um, and you know, quickly, you know, it never got into me, but you know, I cover myself with DEET and those type of things. And I have not, I haven't really been camping since. So, uh,
yeah, yeah,
but not opposed to, but yeah, I'm a lot more cautious. If I see one, you know, sometimes I get into full blown panic mode, and I'm like searching my whole body and stuff like that, because it's just something I never want to live through again. But like I said, I'm not too worried, because I kind of know where to go if it ever happened again.
mhm.
Um, but I'm hoping that never happens again. Um, and
Don't squeeze the tick and
yeah,
burn
you
it with a
need
match to get it off.
uh, and just remember that, you know, the blood tests don't work for you, but they do work for the tick. So always save the tick. You can freeze the tick too. It does not hurt it.
Mhm.
And there's places that take it for free. You know, check with your local universities and stuff like that, or any kind of university that has like, a lot. You can just, it's a Google thing, you could Google it. But I found, there's Auburn University, which is in Alabama. They take ticks and do research on.
One that I really liked, and I had my mom send a couple ticks in, Lone Star ticks in, because she, some of those ones is really, because so it's really interesting. In Minnesota, we don't have the Lone Star tick, at least not nearly that prevalent, not yet.
Yeah,
it's the dog tick, American dog tick, and the deer tick in Minnesota. And the deer tick is the one that traditionally carries the Lyme disease bacteria. It's somewhere around 40 to 60% of deer ticks that are found to have Lyme bacteria. The Lone Star, however, can carry Powassan virus, Heartland virus, ehrlichiosis, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, co-infections like that. And then this new, not necessarily new, but it's gaining a lot of momentum. And I actually have heard that it's affecting a lot of people in the South that don't even know it. The allergy to red meat or meat products. And it's really, really becoming kind of I might have actually heard of from an interview on this podcast. I think you might, Rich, I think you might have had somebody on that talked about it.
It's the alpha-gal, Ryan. The
alpha-gal, yep.
And not even clear about what causes alpha-gal. It is a Lone Star tick.
Yeah,
and
the
not
sugar
really
molecule.
clear what causes it. They're not sure if it's a blood meal that the Lone Star tick had, which is then spit into, or it's actually the spit from the tick that's causing the allergy, but it is causing meat allergies. And it's a very, very difficult thing to overcome if you are in fact suffering from that alpha-gal. So we've had a number of different interviews on this podcast, and actually I think the episode that's going to be released just before this one is an interview that my traditional co-host Matt Sabatello did with one of the two alpha gals who started their own podcast. They've been on our podcast on several occasions. So yeah, it's a tremendous challenge with the Lone Star ticks.
Yeah. And so what I was trying to get at is there's a company called Technology. There's a few out there. There's several good ones, but that's the one my mom, we were visiting my uncle. He's down in the Springfield, Missouri area in a really, really rural, very wooded area. And they have such an issue with the Lone Star tick down there in the Ozarks. It's everywhere. And those ticks can be the size of a poppy seed or a pinhead. And so I had one on me, found it in the shower, even underneath. They like to go for my ankles. They like to crawl underneath my sock, go for my ankle. And I at first got pretty nervous, but then because I didn't know much about Lone Star, because I'm from Minnesota. There's no Lone Star tick there. Right. And so I'm like, oh my God. But I was relieved to know that most of this, like anything you get from it, it's pretty treatable if you know about it right away. So send that tick in. Technology or your local health university that has a center like what you were talking about, and get peace of mind, because my mom, I convinced her to do it. She had 2 ticks on her that she didn't know about for 24 hours on her armpit and her back. And she found it after the shower, after it was engorged. And she actually also was having like some cold symptoms, unrelated, but of course she knows my battle that I went through with Lyme. So she's getting a little nervous. I said, Mom, just send it in, get peace of mind. You might just want to get on, but you know what the doctor in rural Minnesota told her? Oh, you should be fine. We don't see this type here really at all, but we'll give you 3 days of doxy in case. I said, Mom, no way. If you send that tick in right away, and sure, maybe you can wait for a little while without the doxy, but if that tick comes back positive or anything, I don't care who you have to knock down in Minnesota, you tell them you want whatever treatment that is going to take to treat that thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't even want antibiotics, the biocidin is good, but I still am I'm a huge believer in herbals, but I'm also a real big believer into like the antibiotics, because I mean,
acute treatment, absolutely,
it helped me. And the herbal, and it's like one of those things you throw just everything at it, so you really don't know what is the major mover of treatment. You just kind of throw anything at it, and like one thing will hit, something will hit. It's just kind of like, I think it was like warfare. Something's gonna hit something. and you just don't really know what it is, but you just take it anyway. But everybody's got their own healing journey, because I know people that have treated themselves by going just on a carnivore diet, like, and then their Lyme goes away. Obviously that'd be terrible if you had alpha gal, you couldn't do that, but
So guys,
yeah,
there are a couple of things I do want to revisit with you. And one of the things is tick testing.
yeah,
Actually, let me first, we have a tick by blueprint on our website, on the Tick Bootcamp website, that we developed actually based on interviews that we've done with folks like you. So I do strongly urge you and our listeners to go to our Tick by Blueprint for a step-by-step guide on what you might want to do in the event that you were bitten by a tick. I do want to revisit the tick testing with you, because there was one thing that you said that I think we want to clarify, and that is
sure.
we strongly urge folks to get their tick tested.
Yeah,
And you'll see that on a Tick by Blueprint. And when I have been bitten by ticks, I have gotten my tick tested. But there is some controversy about tick testing, and I think we should visit this, because the CDC does question the efficacy of tick testing. And the reason they question the validity or the efficacy of tick testing is because you don't know whether or not what is tested in the tick after it has bitten you has been spit into you, and you don't know if what had been in the tick had been spit into you and therefore is not going to be tested. So
right.
tick testing is important, but just because you have a tick that is not testing positive for a certain microbe doesn't mean that microbe wasn't spit into you and is therefore not in the tick. So one of the things that I just wanted to be careful with, Ryan, here is just because your tick is not testing positive for something doesn't mean you shouldn't be taking some prophylactic steps to protect yourself. Likewise, just because the tick has something in it doesn't mean that was spit into you, and therefore you should necessarily be testing for a particular type of, treating for a particular type of microbe, because it may not be in you, right?
Yeah,
So there are some microbes, for example, that will be spit into you within 15 minutes of when the tick bites you. Powassan is one of the viruses, for example, which can be fatal, that will be spit into you very quickly. But Borrelia, at least the traditional form of Borrelia that is associated with Lyme disease, in most cases the tick has to be attached to you for about 90 minutes. For about 36 hours. Could be as low as 24 hours. There's again some debate about whether or not it could be in the spit glands of the tick when it first bites you. But be that as it may, we want to be really careful about the recommendations that we're making with tick testing and what we should do with it. Again,
sure.
we here at Tick Bootcamp strongly recommend that the tick be tested, but we also strongly recommend that you confer with your doctor and you consider prophylactic treatment, regardless of whether the test tests positive or not.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Also add to that, Rich, things are always constantly evolving in this arena. What we think today, it could be, there could be something groundbreaking or different that's coming out tomorrow. And there's so much happening that we aren't, there's people that are really working hard on this. And so, I always talk to your LLMD, talk to your medical professional, certainly use things that you've learned through podcasts and forums and things like that as, knowledge to put in your pocket to have. But always be an advocate for yourself. That's what I always say, is really advocate for yourself.
And so one of the other things that Ryan, I did want to also put on your radar is on our Tick by Blueprint, we recommend that you go to the ILAD site, and there is a link on our blueprint where there is a series of recommendations that are being made by ILADs about how to treat prophylactically. And I think that's something that you want to bring with you to your medical doctor's office when you go, because like you, Ryan, I think it's wonderful if you can work with a Lyme-literate medical doctor. But I think one of the things we've just learned from Luke is it's not easy to find a Lyme-literate medical doctor, right? And it's not easy to get into their offices in the event that you do, in fact, find a Lyme-literate medical doctor. So if we're getting bitten by ticks, and we're all getting bitten by ticks all the time, and we want to work with medical doctors, which we strongly recommend, it's probably unlikely that you're going to get into an LLMD in time for your prophylactic treatment. So I think a better approach to recommend is that you go to our website, you download the ILADS recommendation, and you bring that to your regular medical doctor. And now you and your doctor are partnering together with some recommendations that have been well established by one of the leading, if not the leading Lyme organization in the country, I think in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can come up with some decisions together about how to prophylactically treat, because I just don't think, quite frankly, an LLMD is going to be available to you. There just aren't enough of them, and it's hard to get into them. So I think you have to find another way of getting that treatment. But again, you guys are having this brilliant conversation. I mean, I really appreciate everything you guys are.
I'm just an advocate.
This is great.
Setting yourself up for success, like that blueprint. I wish I had known about it at the time. I do believe I fell across tick boot camp going through the throes of it, and a lot of those interviews helped me a lot. So when I got asked to be on this, it was kind of it's a real honor, because it I feel like you're going to reach some of these people that were exactly wearing my shoes at the time, and you will get better. You will get better.
So look, another one of the things you did is you talked about some of the leading doctors, such as Dr. Ross, who have been influential in your journey. And we've interviewed every one of the doctors that you had mentioned. For example, Dr. Ross was interviewed on episode 354 of our podcast. We certainly recommend folks listen to that episode. We've interviewed Dr. Ross several times. He's actually been the most interviewed person on our podcast. We've interviewed Dr. Horowitz, and it is important for folks to to at least get to know these folks, and listen, and have a resource where they can listen to the advice that these folks are given, because a lot of folks are so sick that they can't read those books. They just don't have the capacity to do that. But you can begin to learn about these folks and learn about their recommendations and the experiences that they've had, from podcasts like this one. So. Dr. Ross, great resource in episode 354. I just looked that up while you were mentioning him.
Yes, definitely. And I, always staying up to date with the latest treatments. There are a couple things I subscribe to that I get like invoice, like little emails, and there's a couple things that are coming out on the market, hopefully, that are going to be usable for a treatment soon, that could potentially be the cure for it. It's always I like to be optimistic about it. But I think a lot more research is going into it, because, it seems like there's a different approach to it now than it was like even a year ago.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I mean, they've been used. I mean, we've been doing this podcast now for 5 years, and it's literally night and day from what we started to where we are now. I think the challenge, and I'm not as optimistic as maybe you are, about where we are just yet, because most of the research is going into just Borrelia in fact, right? Which is only one of 14 strains of just that one bacteria. And because Lyme disease really is a polymicrobial infection, where is a whole bunch of germs that are spit into you, which also then begin to interact with the other germs you've already been harboring in your body. The vaccine efforts I applaud, but I'm not really excited about the prospect of the efficacy of that they're going to have. Now, again, I can tell you that we had actually a debate. Speaking of Dr. Ross, who I know you're a big fan of, Luke, Dr. Ross had argued to us that that Lyme is the most insidious of all of the the microbes that spit into you, and he argued that perhaps if we can manage that, the rest of them wouldn't be as dangerous as they are. And again, maybe he's right, maybe wrong. I don't know, but it certainly did give us pause when we had been critical of some of the optimism that that some folks had expressed to us. I do think that the research efforts, some of which are driven by grants from government, most of which are driven by research from Lyme not-for-profits, and some of the folks who are doing research that's driven by those dollars, those private foundational dollars, is really having an impact, and that is really exciting. So it looks like we may have a frozen Luke.
But I'll add to that, Rich, while his phone starts to buffer, as far as like focusing on that magic silver bullet to knock it out, or getting a vaccine to reduce or completely eradicate it. From what I've learned is that there's a root cause to why you got sick, and that's what we need to address in society. The C-19 virus really brought a lot of attention to why are we getting so sick, and why are some people getting sick and some not. Those who are completely healthy, seemingly. I have a family member who's in her 90s, and she has she has the virus right now, and she has no symptoms. She feels fine, but she tested positive for it. So the sickness, the level of sickness that we're getting from Lyme and associated polymicrobial, your definition that you've come up, you guys have kind of coined there, is because of all the other things going on: fast-paced society, heavy metals, toxins and things, pesticides. I just saw an article today that the EPA is banning a herbicide for causing they've found cause birth defects. And so it's a very, very, there is no simple answer to this. And, it's great. It's great that we are having the conversation, though, is what I'm trying to say. And we lost Luke. He was moving around, and I think he's trying to reconnect here. So I guess we'll have him.
We're toward the end of our time anyway. We're bordering on the 2-hour mark. I mean, this has just been such a brilliant conversation that I think folks are going to feel like they've been listening for only a couple of minutes when they're going to be here at close to 2 hours. So I think it's time for us to wind down, Ryan. So again, I thank you so much for doing a brilliant job as a host. I didn't want to call you a co-host because I didn't need to ask any questions. I sort of stepped in towards the end of the interview, and this has just been a brilliant interview. So thank you for inviting our guest, and thank you for doing such a great job with this interview.
Yeah, I mean, the more minds we can get together and discuss this, I think the better it helps everybody, and the more points we connect, that soon, who knows, AI will figure it all out for us with all the random knowledge and information out there now. I'm very hopeful, and Luke, it looks like he's back to wish us well.
Yes.
Appreciate you coming on, Luke. We were just kind of wrapping up here now.
Oh yes,
it's been about 2 hours, so
battery's dying. So yeah, I appreciate it, and I couldn't thank you guys enough. And I'm a huge fan, and will continue to advocate and use any sort of resource I have. But I just appreciate you guys having me for the short amount of time. Like I said, my journey could go on and on and on, and I'm just thankful I get to do what I do.
You cut out there again a little bit, Luke. You might be having some reception problems.
Yeah, so it's wonderful. So again, thank you guys very much. I'm going to ask Luke to stay in touch with us, and Ryan, as always, we have some other work we're going to be doing together. So let's tease that a little bit. You've been doing some really exciting stuff. We have our new YouTube channel that we're going to be releasing some videos on. So I just want to share with folks. In general, we're just going to tease it. You're going to be doing some work with us. We're going to be doing some other work that we're doing on YouTube. We want to certainly invite folks to come to our YouTube channel. We're going to be launching our videos where we are sharing the patterns that we've observed during the course of interviewing almost 500 folks on this podcast, and well over 1,000 folks outside of this podcast. We've also responded to several million comments at different times. So we have some patterns that we're going to be sharing, and also Ryan has a secret guest that he's going to try to get a secret celebrity guest he's going to try to get to come onto our podcast,
You
We'll
never
not
know.
tell you about specifically, but we're just going to tease all of you to let you know some cool things are coming.
Awesome.
All right, guys.
All right.
Thank you very much. And again, Luke, thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your journey
Absolutely.
with us.
Well, thank you
Thanks,
so much.
guys.